Or am I? Good morning. So we're here, this panel. By the way, guys, I've got a bit of a surprise for you. We're going to do this as it's the year of the Manx language in Manx.
I speak Dutch. Let's do it in Dutch.
But through the power of AI, when we're speaking to the microphones, it's in a language our audience can understand. So regenerative tourism, that's why we're here. This can strengthen communities, ecosystems, language and culture across the Celtic nations, and how businesses can collaborate from doing less harm to creating a net positive impact. What is regenerative tourism? It's a focus on place-based well-being, supporting living systems, people, nature, culture, and the economy to thrive and renew over time. It often complements sustainability by emphasizing reciprocity, stewardship, and shared value creation. So, Jamie, I'll start with you if you don't mind. You can introduce yourself and your business and tell us a bit about your region.
Yes, of course. My name's Jamie Miles. I'm the founder, managing director of Anglesey Holiday Lettings. Born and bred in Cornwall. And a very, very similar story to Simon's parents, former Royal Marine. Also, rather randomly, I used to be the military advisor to the Game of Thrones. And then I'd already started this business way back when, built a holiday let, and then a friend said, "You manage your holiday let, do you want to look after mine?" And then for about 5 years, while I was doing the filming side, we had this little side hustle going in Anglesey. And how I got there is another story, by the way. And then in late 2019, early 20, you couldn't get the timing wrong, could you, with COVID and everything else, we then decided to turn this little side hustle into something a little bit more serious. And we now manage, we're a one-stop shop business. An owner gives us the keys, even at the start of the refurbs and everything else. And they go off to wherever they live, and I hand them a statement once a month, and my team deal with everything. We've got 103 units on the Isle of Anglesey, and much like the Isle of Man, first visit, by the way, it's beautiful.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
In fact, I think the Anglesey is catching up to the Isle of Man, isn't it? The 70,000 residents. I think we're about 80,000, just over.
If there's one thing Anglesey cannot do, it's data. Okay, they don't even know how many holiday lets they've got, seriously. And they say, "Oh, you ask one person," we had the conversation this morning, "how many visits did you get?" You ask one person, they'll say 1 million. You ask someone else, they'll say 5. They haven't got a clue. They don't even know how many people live on the island. It's quite random. 1/3 of the properties aren't even registered with Land Registry. It's a little, but that's me, by the way.
Great. John.
Yeah, I'm John Keggin. I am a Manx born and bred. I grew up on the island, and I founded Island Escapes in 2018 with a vision of really helping to drive tourism and drive the visitor economy through really quality being embedded in everything we do. And a bit like Jamie's business in Anglesey, we've got a lot of similarities. We do everything from the marketing and the bookings through to the housekeeping, property management, maintenance. And last year, we were very pleased to join the Sapphire Holidays family. As you've probably seen from the presentation there, it's a perfect fit for our business, and they're really going to help drive things forward, and really, really excited about the future for the Isle of Man and for the visitor economy.
And welcome back, Simon.
I don't have to say anything because I just said it before. I'll keep the time tight.
Yeah. So, Simon, I'll start with you just to start the conversation on regenerative tourism. What does it mean in practice for your business?
I think you've got the hint from what we were doing, what we've already said is it's a lot of what we already do. We live in the place, we love the place, we want to look after the place, and commercially, it's why people come to visit us. So we don't want to be ruining it. I think tourism has been put on a bit of a naughty step, and I don't think that's entirely fair, and you'll probably gather that from the presentation we've just been through. There's a lot about tourism that is inherently regenerative, and in the end, what are we doing? We're providing a rather marvellous thing for people. It's a holiday. It's a chance to reconnect. It's a chance to take time for themselves. It's time to get to know their families again. that's a great thing to do. And on the other side, we're looking after people's properties, which usually they bust their guts to renovate or replace or do whatever they've had to do. Farmers diversifying. So I think if you start with that thing, it's in our DNA, it's already there. Doesn't mean we can be complacent. And as you probably again seen from the presentation, we're determined to keep doing more. But I don't think it's well enough understood quite how good we already are as an industry.
And John, just thinking of the Isle of Man, obviously we have our UNESCO biosphere status. Any different on the Isle of Man? How do you find it here?
No, I mean, it's a similar story. I think for us, it's all about kind of the quality of the visit, not necessarily about the numbers. So it's about kind of making sure that the visitor leaves the island in a better place than when they arrived. So whether that's through sort of economic contribution, culture, or through kind of experiencing our kind of activities and attractions, really. So and the sort of the biodiversity side of things. I mean, really, just following on really what Simon said, I think it's very, very similar.
And Jamie, Anglesey?
Yeah, I like to think that we were leaving the place better than we found it. And I don't mean, by stepping on a daisy. I mean by just, helping the local communities. We've had in the last 10 years, 15,000 jobs from industry lost. Industry has left our island. And 75% of that number have now shifted across onto supporting tourism. So, we're economically, commercially growing, regenerating what's been lost over the recent years. I think that's probably my angle, personally, more commercial, obviously.
Yeah. So thinking about that local business and supply, particularly in your kind of region, how has that gone over the last 10, 20 years? You mentioned business have been moving away, but in terms of local supply versus national supply?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we've got a bit of an issue on Anglesey. The perception, I think, of our entire sector across the UK is getting a bit of a hammering. The narrative that's out there is that Airbnb, home issues, this, that, and the other. We've now got the facts on Anglesey. There are more land banked and empty houses by a significant figure than there are holiday lets. We've got more second homes that are not generating income than we have holiday lets. So actually, the perception is that our industry has massively grown. It hasn't. They've even got that data wrong. But a simple figure to take away of how our sector should be perceived is that for every 1.5 houses on my portfolio, it generates a full-time job on the average Anglesey wage. That's a take-home statement for anyone. So actually, in the last 10 years, it's professional businesses like ours that have stepped up to the plate, that are delivering quality. They are not delivering a poor, unsupervised product. We're professionalizing, and we welcome all of the regulation and everything that comes along. So actually, we can now hold our heads up high and say, look, my simple little business, my little family business that used to be a side hustle, through the Steam report, that amount of money that these people spend, just my visitors, my 18 and bit thousand visitors that came in 2025, contributed, without payment of rent, £5 million to the local economy. That's accurate data. So if you now go back, what have we produced over the last 10 years? It's a phenomenal amount of money that's going into our local economy and regenerating that economy.
Sounds fantastic. And what about that local supplier network? Have they kept up with you? Are they?
Yeah, exactly. Have they kept up with us? No. But trying to do business on Anglesey, business to business, is like pushing water uphill. It really is difficult. But that's a culture thing that we're adapting to. I've got an island that are probably 60% indigenous, 40% what we call blow-ins. I'm a blow-in, and not left. There's a little bit of a rub, but we get on well. 100% of my produce comes from the island. with the exception of bin bags. I can't get bin bags quite randomly, but you know that. So now all of my contractors are local. All of my staff, minus one, are from the island. The talent pool is quite small, 35-ish thousand. Trying to find a digital marketer, trying to find a financial director, trying to find a revenue manager is just all very difficult. But we've grown. My first employee is now my number 2. So we've grown, my 24 of my staff on my books are from the island. And 100% of my contractors, of which there are 60 odd, are from the island.
Excellent. Thank you very much. John, you've got that stretch of water, obviously, between here and the adjacent isles.
Yeah, I mean, the stretch of water is one of our challenges, as we know, for growing visitor numbers here, but it's also an opportunity in many ways as well for us to really look at local always when we're talking about local suppliers, because it's easiest to work locally and it's better as well. So I would say my experience is probably slightly different to Jamie's, where we actually have a really quite good engaging local supplier market, and that means we work with a vast array of local suppliers, and we have some great local businesses here on the island. And I think for me, one of the greatest pleasures I take is actually helping other businesses grow and develop, and the collaborations are so important. It really makes me happy when I go and speak to a business owner and they say, "Oh, we've had your guests in here at the weekend," or "We've been, we're really pleased, that you're doing what you're doing because it's bringing that extra footfall. We've only got a limited population here on the island. You need that extra tourism footfall to help support those businesses, which all the locals on the island love as well. And if we didn't have a visitor economy here, those businesses wouldn't exist."
Yeah, tremendous contribution. And Simon, some great statistics from yourself in terms of local supply, but how do you balance that national supply, local supply competitiveness to a larger organisation?
If you think of inherently, each holiday cottage is effectively a small micro business. 4 holiday cottages, maybe 1 post office in terms of annual revenue. And the good thing about small businesses is they deliver back into the local economy incredibly effectively. So the simple things of getting the windows sorted, getting the windows cleaned, painted, decorated, anything that happens to one of our holiday homes is usually delivered by a local supplier, really quite local to that individual property. So I would reckon that the internal cycle, the sort of localization of the revenue from a holiday cottage has got to be well above 90%. We employ locally like everyone else. They're cleaned by people who are local. It's all incredibly local. So it's not like Premier Inn have moved in and the profits ship up to wherever Premier Inn are owned. And again, we're very good at keeping Airbnb out of our business, so nothing goes to Seattle. We keep it local. So in terms of a form of business that generates for the local economy, it's because it's so small, it's very sticky.
Yeah. And any policy or planning changes that you would want to make?
Okay, here we go. Out comes the soapbox. Yes, well, I've lived through. Yeah, it was very interesting to compare the situation here. And I was talking with John last night. Is Isle of Man have grown up with a solid attitude to regulation, building control come in. You've got all the regulations, you've lined them up, you've set them in place over a number of years, and it makes for a very orderly, well understood system. Unfortunately, that's the exception, not the rule. So, UK is completely disorderly. The regulators have come very late to us, to our business, and it's been a sort of helter-skelter, driven by a lot of envy politics. And as Jamie was saying, no one's measured the numbers. Yeah, we haven't even registered the number of holiday properties that we have in the UK. They don't know yet. So perhaps start with the registration, do the counting, then figure out how many you've got, and then figure out what you want to do about the number you've got, and then start setting the policy in place. Unfortunately, it's been a bit of helter-skelter. We've got to be seen to be doing something about this, and piling on some regulation and some policy making that is not really very well thought through. And I'm not going to go through it in detail because I will be here for way over the 11 minutes and 13 seconds we've got left. But I would like to hold up the Isle of Man as an exemplar of actually take your time and regulate at a reasonable pace and make your policy setting evidence-based. We as an industry have been slow to inform government, and it's partly our fault. That is no longer the case. We now have the numbers. We're delivering them into government. It's a little bit late, and that's partly our fault, but we're starting to see some recognition. So my big plea is to government, to local councils or whatever, gather evidence, listen to the people in the business because we actually want to help, and then we can build policy based on evidence that is without the somewhat common unintended consequences. And that's the bit we don't want to see.
And John, obviously tremendous growth over recent years, and you must have had plenty of planning applications in. How have you found the process, and do we differ a bit from the UK?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Isle of Man is unique because we've had this the Tourism Act 1975, I think it is. It's been around for a long time that there's been planning controls needed in order to make holiday properties and tourist accommodation. That is quite good because it means that anyone who's really serious about it has to go through that process. You can't just list a property on Airbnb. It's not allowed. You have to go through that process before you can then list the property on Airbnb. And it does mean that we've been able to keep that market nice, regulated, and it ensures a decent level of quality and also supply as well. For us, now being part of something bigger, not having to use OTAs like Airbnb is great because beforehand we were great because we managed to drive about 80% of our business from direct bookings, but we needed those OTAs, Airbnb, Booking.com, those type of businesses to fill that 20%. And that money was leaving the island, their commission, their fees, and now we are completely 100% direct bookings. All that money is being reinvested and staying within our communities.
I'm frightened to ask Jamie.
Absolutely, I think if you speak it to anyone who's running a business in our sector, they will say, like, we've got to get the data. You know, I'm operating in Wales and, wow, you couldn't get it so wrong. But anyway, we're making steps towards now the Welsh Revenue Authority. We've got to register our holiday lets as of August, so we're starting to collect the data. I'd like to see a United Kingdom set of policies. I think the sector needs to be aligned. If it's going to be licensed, regulated, registered, whatever you want to call it, we need to be aligned. We need to be operating in the same rules. I get that there is, different local requirements which can be add-ons. I get that, but I think if we had a shared policy, I think that would solve a lot of our problems.
Okay. So what do you see as the biggest opportunity for regenerative tourism in the future in your region?
I think we're already doing it, John and I. We got some synergy, how you operate on an island, our tourists are very similar. I think, I haven't been back to Cornwall for a long time. I probably won't be allowed in now. But I think how the type of tourists that you get here and the type of tourists we get where we are means that John and I need to operate our businesses the way we do. So we already have this synergy where we share ideas. We've visited each other, and we bounce off some great stuff. I think that's probably the best opportunity for me, I believe.
And opportunities in the Isle of Man, John?
Yeah, I mean, as touched on in that presentation, the unique hideaways, we have we do not have many of those on the island, that unique accommodation that people are looking for, that ecotourism side of things. It's a massive opportunity here with the UNESCO biosphere. we're seeing a growth in people who are looking at that type of holiday. Our guests who want to stay with us, they want to take part in meaningful activities and kind of connect with nature. That's what the Isle of Man is all about, really. So we are the perfect destination for that. If I was investing in holiday accommodation now, I'd be looking at quirky tree houses, unusual property here on the island, because where people can connect with nature. I think that's a great opportunity right now.
And are there still opportunities in the southwest? Maybe a bit more of a mature market, Simon?
Definitely a mature market. I'm kind of reflecting on this environment, and I think there's a great opportunity for the various visits, the tourist boards from the Celtic regions, to compare notes in a very transparent way, what worked, what didn't, and start networking together. And there's an interesting, I go way back in history, we visit Cornwall to the Dark Ages, and the Isle of Man is a much younger being in terms of its tourist board. And it's really interesting to see the difference between the old sister and the young sister. I think there's a lot to be learned across all the Celtic nations, because they do, share some similar visitor types who are looking for similar things, and how you attract them, particularly in a modern environment. So I think the big opportunity is, all marketeers are storytellers, but we're no longer telling it with paper, we're telling it with video. And some of us who are a bit long in the tooth have got to get used to that a bit, because talking about the sort of future board stuff, our next generation of guests and visitors are going to be on this, and it's going to be moving in. So we've got to start telling stories on video. We can share those stories on video and start. The great thing about that is we have this wealth of culture in our Celtic areas where we can share those stories with the rest of the world, and that will then bring the right sort of visitors who want it to come here for the right sort of reasons. But we've got to get sharp about that, and it requires some very good digital skills. And that's the bit that's kept our business growing, is investing in the digital side of what we do. So whenever people think of our holiday letting, they think of scrubbing floors and cleaning loos and doing laundry. Actually, we've got a development team of about 10 or 12 people. We've got a support team. So we've got 15 to 20 people, IT people. Tony is one of our programmers. Bloody good presenter, but he's also a programmer. And people don't relate a tourism business with the digital. And it's quite easily when people compartmentalise, can't even do English, let alone Manx. This is why we've got to encourage the digital industry, and that's tourism over there. Oh, we don't like tourism, let's do digital. Tourism is bloody digital. And I think starting to realise how tourism can feed the aspirations of the community as a whole is really, really important.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Just a couple of minutes left, so we are going to go to the audience to see if we've got any brave questions. Here we go. Hand up over on the left. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, you can hear me. I'm a farmer's son. Something that Simon, you said, touched a point with me. So you said about holiday in it being important for the business to stay, people to choose a Cornish business. Sorry, you can hear me now. How do we tell us something that farmers always feel is it's natural to buy British, to support local. That's a really good thing, but we're always amazed, say, work in an office and people around us don't have that natural instinct. They buy everything off Amazon. They don't think about supporting local. How do you and how do we encourage that message, tell that story that it's really good to support local, to buy local?
Yeah, so that buy local kind of, that local supply, how do we encourage businesses to connect?
Well, for me, I'd just set the example and make sure that those products are there, visible, first of all. It's my duty to make sure that those local products are visible, then sure that my partnerships are in place, with my business. So we promote all of the local businesses. We have discount schemes, we have free ticket schemes, we have all sorts of things that go on. So for me as a business, my answer to that would be, I think it's every business's duty to promote local first, British second, and everything else last.
Sounds good. John?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes people can be put off by the cost on things and the convenience of going to Amazon and ordering. It's something you just have to change your mindset. I think we changed our mindset about that a year or so ago when we joined the group, and just that we were guilty of sometimes of just going and ordering things online. We try to cut that back as much as we possibly can now.
Yeah, I think we've got a duty to tell stories, and our guests love it, about the local producers out there. And I think actually Cornwall, I know Cornwall has been a good example of that, because I've been around for quite a long time now. So in the 50 years, if I go back 50 years, we were terrible at it. We didn't really have food production. The quality of the restaurants wasn't great. The beer was appalling. And now we have microbreweries. We've come off the back of Rick Stein and have a very flourishing restaurant scene, fed by tourism, but also fed by the Cornish people who have come up and taken and risen with the tide to the point where Cornwall now is regarded as a food destination. And they talk about our Michelin star chefs and all the rest of it. That's a great journey. And we're a bit Celtic about that because we're not really very good at shouting about it. And we probably need to do that a bit more.
Well, please carry on the conversation during lunch about regenerative tourism. Jamie, John, Simon, thank you very much.